Anthony Mangnall.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker, and it's a pleasure to follow the Honourable Lady from Warrington North. Her faith in technology to read a speech from it is far greater than mine. I've seen many a speech kiboshed in the middle of their flow, but there's much she said that I agree on, and I think when she talks about mental health, when she talks about PIP, there is certainly work that can be done. And just to add to her comments around PIP, I've always been amazed at, one, sometimes the inability for assessors to understand the causes or the symptoms and the issues that people are suffering from, and two, the requirement to sometimes understand whether or not a circumstance might change for someone, and the constant need to reanalyse that person through their lifetime, causing a great deal of hardship on the family members who have to do those applications. It's something my office spends a great deal of time doing. Mr Deputy Speaker, it's a pleasure to be able to speak in this debate and to support the King's speech. For the topic of today, I am surprised in the course of the remarks that we've had that we haven't been a little bit more positive, because from across the House there has been the identification that we have been leaders in the energy markets, we have been a leader in growing our economy, and we have been a leader in cutting emissions. And if you take the Valence report, which just identifies the extraordinary growth of this country from 1990 to 2019, where we have grown our economy by 78%, but at the same time managed to cut emissions by 44%, you can see the significant changes that we've made in this country, but also the significant progress we have made to creating a green economy. And I have to say, we do have to remind people, both in this chamber and across the country, that we are the fastest country in the G7 when it comes to cutting emissions. That is something to be proud of, it is something to build upon, and it is something we forget at our peril. It is something that actually also breeds hope. It breeds hope within our people, and it breeds hope within our businesses that we can actually set up the infrastructure and network to encourage more businesses to do that. I've heard from many members across this House about how they hope to see oil companies become a dying breed. And I say this with a little bit of caution. I do not think there is a single one of us in this room that if we could flick a switch and transition immediately to a green economy, taking all the jobs in the oil industry with it, taking all the investment with it, that we wouldn't gladly flick that switch. But I will say, in the absence of that switch being present, you have to encourage and push the oil companies to go green, and that is what so many of them are doing. Oil companies are part of the answer to a greener economy, encouraging them to invest in solar, encouraging them to invest in wind, encouraging them to invest in maritime. It has to be part and parcel of that mix and of that structure. It's also surprised me in the course of this debate and this discussion that we haven't spoken more about the Treasury's position in terms of incentivising businesses to do more to invest in green technologies in this country, whether it's through tax credits, research and development, innovation funds, the British Infrastructure Bank, which I see one of the ministers nodding his head on because he knows a great deal about this, the £22 billion worth of capital that has been made available for businesses to invest in this area, in this sector in the United Kingdom. We forget that at our peril, because it is the certainty, it will create the certainty to help us transition in the direction that we want to, which is arguably a cleaner, greener economy, and one that addresses climate change. That said, Mr Deputy Speaker, we can all recognise the opportunities in this place. And if I may just use a few examples from my own constituency of Totnes and South Devon. The first, Mr Deputy Speaker, is around maritime power or marine energy. We have some of the strongest tides in the world. We should make use of them. Up until recently, I would argue that our sort of interest in our investment into marine energy has been lacklustre. Yet recent trials across the country, supported by the UK government, have shown the huge potential that we have across our coastline to go green in those areas. And indeed, I've actually got a vicar in Dartmouth who is trying to make his church the first maritime-powered or marine energy-powered church in the country. Things like that need to be promoted and supported. We need to review things like tidal lagoons. It's been far too long since we've had a proper debate in this place about the Swansea tidal lagoon and the power that that would have had. There are the mechanisms out there to support these things, and we have to explore them to make sure that we have a diverse mix, not just solar, not just energy, but maritime, as well as what others have said in terms of nuclear and using the last vestiges of oil and gas where necessary. There was an interesting point 2 years ago that was put forward by the member for Wantage, who I don't know if he still owns this bill, which is the local electricity bill. This was something that many of us from across the House poured our support into, which was around electricity generators to become the local electricity suppliers. I very much welcome what the Secretary of State said in her opening remarks, because she talked about upgrading the grid. If we can upgrade the grid, then the possibilities of the local electricity bill will be immense, and we can find all sorts of innovative ways in which we can power local communities. Again, an example in my own constituency, Mr. Deputy Speaker, is Sustainable South Brent, which have erected their own wind turbine and are powering parts of their village from this turbine and helping to reduce the costs of those buildings. These are things that we should be trying to replicate across the country, but we can only do this if we look at how we can upgrade the grid and encourage and embolden local communities to take that sort of action. I have to say, Mr. Deputy Speaker, it's a privilege to be able to hear the honourable gentleman from Kingswood's speech, and I agree with much of it, although I'm sorry he won't be voting with the King's speech. He was right that we are a paragon and a model to the rest of the world, and that we have been a leader in this area. And I have to say, where I disagree with him is that I still think we are a leader in these areas. Of course, we have to take people with us. We are only in this place because people have sent us to be here to represent their views. And there is a great deal of scepticism out there. And so I think the Prime Minister is right to be honest with people about the costs incurred around the green transition. I think he's right to make sure that we are being realistic about the plans and proposals that we're putting forward. And I think he's right to try and minimise the significant costs that might end up on their doorstep as a result. These things are to be applauded. And I have to say, I don't at any point think that that is the watering down of our green agenda. Now, Mr. Deputy Speaker, if I may, I'd just like to make a few remarks around other parts of the bill. I sit on the International Business and Trade Committee, and before that the Trade Committee, just as a standalone side of things. We have to actually inject a bit more energy into our trade deals, and I mean quite literally energy. There are a number of countries out there that want to sign up and do free trade agreements with the United Kingdom, none other than Morocco. Morocco is wanting to introduce a solar and wind interconnect to the United Kingdom. A free trade agreement can help facilitate that. The fact that it is rumoured that the connecting point will be in Devon has nothing to do with me raising this, because I don't believe it would be in my part of the constituency. But it does show the power and potential within our trade agreements to find new ways in which we can cooperate on an international scale to help harness the power of our natural resources. I should also say, and before I give way to the honourable gentleman, our trade agreements are the perfect way in which we can help harness and create the technology here and trade it with like-minded countries around the world. We've already heard from the Honourable Lady from Basingstoke and her important points around battery power and battery technology in this country and the relationship the UK has with Canada. More of this, Mr. Deputy Speaker. This is what our free trade agreements can facilitate. I give way.
I thank my honourable friend for giving way, and he knows more about trade than many people in this place, but would he agree that there's also an opportunity, on top of all the various different renewable and sustainable energy technologies we could be exporting, that we develop here, the mere act of having a successful transition from 75% oil and gas dependency today to 20% oil and gas in the future, being able to be seen to be able to do that and how to do that, that in itself could be an exportable quantity.
The honourable gentleman is absolutely spot on. If we can help those emerging democracies and economies around the world leapfrog their intensive carbon industries that they think they might need to go in a green direction, with our help and with our support, it will not just be to the benefit of our countries and our economies, but the world over as well. And this is stuff that we should absolutely be talking about. I should also add, and it was already mentioned by the Honourable Lady from Warrington North, around CPTPP and trade scrutiny. I have made myself a constant angst in the government side about talking about scrutiny. The debate on CPTPP is very, very welcome, and I look forward to seeing as many members as there are in the chamber now as when that bill comes in front of the House. But, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I firmly believe if this House is denied proper scrutiny, we are all poorer off within our respective constituencies, with our respective businesses, with our farmers and fishermen. It should be part of our due process that we make sure there is a proper, significant level of scrutiny in this place. And with that in mind, I have a proposal which it is time to update Labour's Constitutional Reform and Governance Act from 2009, to update it to make sure, now that we're outside of the European Union, that we have a proper debate with a votable motion on it, if that is required. I might also add one extra side, which is it would be advisable to give Privy Councillor status to all of the members of the Business and Trade Committee, of which I absolutely declare my interest on this front. However, there is an important point to this. We can do better, as we've seen with the trade agreements that have come forward before. We need greater attendance, greater scrutiny, greater ability to talk up the benefits of the trade deals. Again, the Honourable Lady from Warrington North, sorry to focus on her, said that 0.8% wasn't a lot. I would just urge caution when it comes to forecasts. Forecasts on trade deals are very often wrong because the point in which they are judged is a static point rather than how businesses take advantage of them. And in nearly every instance of a trade agreement that is signed, such as NAFTA, where it was predicted it would not be worth a significant amount to the US economy, it turned out that it was worth a great deal more. So don't necessarily go with the forecast. I mean, there are enough quotes out there to say why economists are wrong. However, I welcome the bill and I welcome the opportunity to discuss more about joining one of the fastest growing regions in the world. Could I just, the last couple of points, if I may, Mr. Speaker, is I've already spoken before in this place about the rental reform bill. We do badly when we pass pieces of legislation quickly. I look forward to the fact that we've committed to reforming and repealing Section 21 in the rental reform bill, but we need to make sure we have a bill that works for both landlords and tenants. And there has to be that balance, because as it currently stands, we are about to present a bill into Parliament in the rental reform bill, which I think will deter people from putting properties into the long-term rental market. I think it will incentivise the short-term let market over the long-term rental market, and that will be a disadvantage to the hundreds of thousands of the millions of tenants in this country. So we just must be careful about it. It's easy for us to clip small parts of our speeches in this place and put them out because it says the right thing, but actually the devil is in the detail, and we have to get it right. Just around T-levels, it's fantastic to see the Prime Minister double down again about apprenticeships, around T-levels, around further education and what we can do. I have in my own constituency South Devon College, which is the absolute exemplar of further education and what can be done, because it is training people in photonics to boat building to bricklaying to hospitality and tourism. The range is staggering, but what it has with it also is government funding and support. The more we can do with this, the more in which we can encourage businesses and students to take advantage of the opportunities that lie within their areas, lie within our agenda around further education, the better people will be off, the better people will be in terms of finding jobs, and the more likely we are to find ways in which we can create businesses not just in centralised parts of this country but all across the regions of the UK. And finally, Mr. Deputy Speaker, is that we've spoken a lot in the King's Speech over the last few days around keeping people safe, and I think it's absolutely right that we have a robust response to those who have committed the most heinous crimes. There can be no doubt about it. There is far more as ever we can do in tackling antisocial behaviour and rural crime in areas across the southwest and indeed other parts of the country. I might also suggest that there are local initiatives that have been set up across the southwest which I think the government would do well to support, not least the Councillor Advocate Scheme, which was set up by Alison Hernandez, the Police and Crime Commissioner in the southwest, in which she liaises with councillors across the area to enhance police visibility and engagement, or indeed my own initiative, which has created police hubs out of parish halls or village halls across South Devon, in which you can drive up visibility, disrupt rural crime and antisocial behaviour, and inspire more confidence that the police are there to help and serve, as we all know they are. Mr. Deputy Speaker, it is a pleasure to be able to support the King's Speech. It's a pleasure to be able to speak up about the proud record this country has in terms of addressing climate change, reducing emissions, creating new technologies and industries. We should be proud of that, we should talk it up, and we should never let the fearmongers win.